souls. And to build a life from every misdeed. That we all may be born with the weapons we need.
Sounds to me like we need to get some new conspiracy theories, because all the old ones turned out to be true. Conspiracy theorists are up something like 37-0. Senator John Kennedy. The horses were running in Moscow, but my body was freezing in the Pacific. I knew this because of the stars, and because of the pressure blooming outward from my spine. It was not pain exactly. It felt like champagne trapped in every vein, fizzing toward the fingertips until the body swelled past capacity. I was not exhaling my weight. I was shifting it, growing too dense for this skin of reality, or perhaps too light. I was tipping over into the next layer. I did not fully leave my bed. Through my bolted window, I could still see the Southern Cross hanging low on the horizon, 4 bright points forming a kite, like the ones I flew on the beaches of southern France as a child. But this cross was no toy. It was a promise that navigation remained possible if you learn to read different skies. Stars held their consistency across dimensions. That much I had learned. The North Star had vanished, dropped below the curve of the Earth when they brought me to this hemisphere. But when my weight returned to Moscow for the second time that night, I found myself standing in the glass skybox above the festival, coat heavy on my shoulders, Polaris burning directly overhead, clear and taunting, unmoving, everything wheeled around it in perfect mocking order. In Moscow, the Pacific facility became unthinkable. A white room dreamed up by exhaustion or chemicals. In the Pacific, waking beneath that bolted window, Moscow dissolved into delusion. Horses, lights, roaring crowds, all phantoms spun from whatever still hummed in my blood. Both were real. I knew it the way you know your own heartbeat in the dark. Neither could admit the other's existence. A single drawing can be either an old woman or a young one, either a rabbit or a duck. The lines identical in both readings, yet the mind capable of holding only one at a time. You can oscillate, you cannot overlap. That was my existence, not madness, not dream. A consciousness switching between two complete and incompatible readings of the same reality, each one fully coherent, each one rendering the other impossible. Tonight I once again existed beneath two skies, and to see one, I had to abandon the other entirely. It was not a simple switching between views, but a kind of erasure. My existence beneath one sky, lifted from its mould and placed beneath another, where it settled with such perfect fit that it seemed always to have held that exact shape beneath those particular stars. The previous sky, the previous version of myself, vanished from possibility as if it had never been real at all, as if I had always been only here, never there. The loneliness of it was crushing, to exist in two places, but be fully present in neither. When I was young, this was the allure. I had found a secret realm, a private frequency only I could tune into. It did not matter then that one world negated the other, for I was the only variable in the equation. Wherever I stood became the only present that mattered. I was the fixed point, the Polaris around which both realities wheeled, the cold and quiet center of my own dual universe. But the impossibility exhausted me now, like a conflict that remains unresolved, a calculation that refused to balance. I remained very much a prisoner here. One life had been erased to validate the other. Hundreds of hooves struck frozen ground with the rhythm of certainty, as if outcomes had already been decided somewhere higher up. Vlad's voice was beside me in the skybox. Moscow winter biting my face. Crowds surging below in the amber light of the festival grounds. But I was only half there. Something in my body knew it before my mind did. A low nausea. Not quite physical. More like the sensation of a signal losing its frequency. Vlad's words reached me in fragments, not sentences. The field around me had begun to thin at its edges. And I understood. The way you understand a dream is ending before you open your eyes. That it was already letting me go. I wanted to stay. I would have given anything to never return to the White Room. I tried to hold on, to press myself into the moment, the cold, the horses, the smell of soil and crowd. But the more deliberately I reached for it, the faster it slipped. Layer 2 released me, not the other way around. That was the one rule I had never found a way around. No matter how far I travelled into that other layer, I always converged back here, back to the White Room, back to being a prisoner of an inexplicable conspiracy. I lay still, waiting for one world to prove the other was lying. Instead, the horses kept running. Beautiful black stallions with braided manes circling the track, while men in expensive suits placed bets they could afford to lose. I was there again, swept into Moscow like the wind. The laptop was already open because I never closed it. They let me keep it. That should have been my first clue. Something was wrong. Though at 27, I was still making the mistake of accepting small mercies without questioning their source. The screen glowed blue in the darkness. I had been writing down my experiences for 5 years, documenting what they called delusions and maladaptive dreaming, and what I called, for lack of a better term, explorations. The difference between the two had never been adequately explained to me. All three involve experiencing events others cannot verify. All three require imagination and a precise attention to detail. The only distinction anyone had ever offered me was volition. Delusions are involuntary. Explorations are chosen. I had always chosen mine, but I had also been working on a theory. What if I had accidentally discovered a new frontier? Not space, but something that transcended space entirely. A dimension of consciousness, accessible through electromagnetic fields. What if the White Room was not a prison, but an antenna? Nemo was already awake. I could feel him the way you feel someone watching from across a room. That prickle of attention against the back of your skull. He never slept. I had asked him once if that bothered him. Nobody sleeps when nobody is tired, he said. Ever the cryptic, turning language inside out, until the emptiness at the center became visible. You are thinking too loud, he said now. You are flushing the dream away. This is important. Vlad has something to show you. I typed the first line without responding. Nemo had become more insistent lately. A flimsy new pattern layered over his usual erratic behavior. I took deep breaths to expand my concentration, to awaken the mist between my eyelids. I smelled the horses and heard their hooves approaching in the distance. The horses, Nemo said. I'm getting there. A surge of frustration prickled my nerves. External in origin. I could distinguish it from my own the moment it arrived. My mind seemed to possess an autoimmune system, not unlike the one in my body. I visualized neurological white blood cells patrolling my consciousness, identifying and neutralizing what did not belong. You always start too far back. Start with the skybox. Start with Vlad. He was right, but I refused to acknowledge it. Nemo had been teaching me things since I was 12 years old, and the accumulated weight of his correctness had become oppressive. When you have an invisible friend who is never wrong, you begin to suspect either that he is not a friend or that you are not sane. I had been living with both possibilities for 14 years. I deleted the first line and started again.